Call to order the Gladstone City Council meeting for August 14th, 2018 at 6:30 p.m. Hello, everyone, and happy National Smile Week. It's also Creamsicle Day, but National Smile Week sounded better. I hope everyone was able to go to the community festival. I understand it was a huge success. Thank you for those here that volunteered countless hours in blood, sweat, and tears to pull that together. Tonight we will start with special recognition in the following presentations. Fire Chief Tom O'Connor recognition, annual presentation on Portland General Electric franchise, Clackamas County Public Health Tobacco Retail Licensing presentation. Our consent agenda includes approval of the July 10th regular meeting and the July 24th work session meeting minutes, approval of the June bank balances, budget report for period ending June 30th, 2018, approval of the June check register, legal costs on projects, department head monthly reports for July 2018, approval of Oregon Liquor Control Commission, also called OLCC, liquor license application for the new owner at 810 East Arlington. The items on our regular meeting agenda include 2 public hearings and a second reading. Public hearing for Resolution 1144, updates to transportation system development charges. Ordinance 1492, North Clackamas County Water Commission, also called the NCCWC, District Intergovernmental Agreement, we refer to as the IGA, amendments. Second reading of Ordinance 1490, amending the Gladstone Municipal Code, the GMC, Chapter 8.04 pertaining to nuisances, and 2 regular agenda items, one being the Gladstone Emergency Preparedness Update, and consider amending the business license fees. Tammy, could you please call the roll?
Councilor Milch.
Present.
Councilor Neese. Present. Councilor Tracy.
Present.
Councilor Reisner.
Here.
Councilor McMahon.
Here.
Councilor Mercero.
Here.
Mayor Stemple.
Present. Could everyone please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. The first item on our agenda is recognition for Fire Chief Tom O'Connor.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So for those of you that weren't present, the city did an official change of command ceremony about 2 hours ago. And so Chief Tom O'Connor is moving on to Vancouver, and now we have interim Chief Jeff Smith. And it was a great ceremony, but just real quickly before I let Jeff do a presentation, because I'm no longer your boss, I wanted to formally thank you. And Joan, this is for you. Thank you for giving us Tom for 2 years. Thank you for opening up your home. I absolutely loved coming out and seeing the Christmas lights, and it was fantastic. So thank you very much. For you, my friend, I can call you a friend now. I just wanted to give you some light reading. This is a book that was written by a city manager who Tom does know, and it's called Playing with Fire. And it is a fictional novel, but I think it's based off of real-time events with a city manager that tried to go in and reorganize a fire department and didn't bode real well for their careers. So I read this book and I learned a lot about the importance of a relationship between the city administrator and the fire chief. So I just wanted you to have that and just to wish you the best of luck. And I can probably hug you. Thank you very much.
You do. We have a tradition at the fire department to give this award. And it's been awarded to people that's been in the department over 20 years. But since Tom's our first career fire chief, we're going to add it as part of the tradition as well. And I have this saying that I keep on the wall in my office. And it's actually a quote from the Bucket List movie. I don't know if you guys have ever seen that, but at the very beginning, it starts out, it's difficult to understand the sum of a person's life. Some people will tell you it's measured by ones left behind. Some believe it is a measure by faith. Some believe by love. Other folks have no meaning. They feel life has no meaning at all. As for me, I believe it's measured yourself by people who measure themselves by you. And Tom is a perfect example of that. He came into the department and he was our change agent, more or less, in regards to what we needed to do for Gladstone. And he's been a mentor to me and mentor for many of our guys in our department. And we are going to give him coveted gold axe.
Awesome.
Very nice.
Wow.
Ooh, shiny.
It is shiny. We like shiny things.
Yep.
Mike, are you there?
I am. Can I both you guys face this way just for a second? Say, here's Johnny.
That's a good reference. Thank you very much, and I think I said most of what I had to say at our ceremony. But I really want to thank the City Council for your support and questions. And ultimately, those questions are important ones for the fire chief to answer, and that's the reason that we're able to do a lot of the things that we do. So thank you, everyone, who was here for putting up with some of my career shenanigans. And I tell you, someone said I've been good for Gladstone. Gladstone has been great for me. It's been great for us. It's been a tremendous good opportunity. And I'm going to miss everybody here. I truly am. You were excellent. Good judgment. Thank you. Probably won't walk down the street. All right. No insult to PGE.
I tried to tell him that he didn't get that note that rescinded his offer at Vancouver, but he didn't believe me. Yeah, you missed that one. I got it, though.
Bye.
All right, the next item is the first presentation, which is the annual presentation on Portland General Electric franchise. Brooke Berglund.
We have it in the packet, if
Yes.
nothing else, so.
All right, we are ready.
Okay. Good afternoon. I guess it's evening now. I feel like it's still afternoon with the sunshine. As the mayor said, I'm Brooke Berglund, and I am local government affairs for Portland General Electric. You guys should all have a copy of the presentation in your packet today, and I wanted to just give you kind of an update on where we are with PGE, do a little touch point on kind of the future direction of PGE. We have a lot of things going on right now, and then answer any questions that you might have. So as a starting point, we had a new CEO and president come on board with PGE. She's been with the company for many years in various different positions, but Maria Pope officially took the helm in January, and we're really excited about the direction that she is moving forward with, and the things that I will be talking about today are definitely her vision in terms of how we see the company moving forward. So a little bit kind of just as background of PGE in Clackamas County. We have about 226 employees who work in Clackamas County. Many of us live in Clackamas County, myself included. And we also have a very strong presence in Clackamas County as well, just in terms of our actual operations. So we have generation facilities here, and then we also obviously have customers here as well. So in terms of kind of what our historic nature has been, we have been in business for over 100 years, and we have always focused on having safe, reliable, and affordable power. That is the kind of basic mission of PGE, and we are still focusing on clean, affordable, and safe power, but we're also adding some other things, which I'll talk a little bit more about. But before we get into a little bit about our vision, I wanted to kind of highlight some of the things. So as you guys, I'm sure, are well aware, we pay to you annual franchise payments every year. So if you look at this slide, I have done a synopsis that just highlights the last 5 years for you guys. And you added a privilege tax that went into effect impartially in 2016, so that's captured in that 2017 number. And then moving forward, so this last year was the first year that you saw the full privilege tax in effect. And this year, the payments were about 5.4% more than in previous 2017 year payment, and that was primarily due to the fact that we had a colder winter and warmer summer. So electricity use was higher, which then results in higher payments. So then now moving on to kind of the future of what we see as PG&E. As I mentioned before, the three things that we've always focused on, safe, reliable, and affordable power, still really important, but our customers today are expecting more than that. So in addition to those three pillars, they're also expecting clean power and carbon-free energy, and also that security that keeps, our system safe from cyber and physical attacks. And so how we do business is looking a little bit different. We are rapidly growing large-scale renewables. We're seeing more of those coming online, and we are blessed to live in a region that has hydro as one of our energy options, and that is part of the PGE portfolio. We have generation from hydro actually right over here in West Lynn, and then we also have it in Estacada as well. In terms of what our future looks like, we were one of the first in the nation to commission a study on economy-wide deep decarbonization. So as we've heard from several of our community partners and from our municipalities that are looking to move towards 100% green power, 100% renewable, that pushes PGE to really look at where our generation sources are coming from, and then also really looking at how do we meet those needs so that we can partner with our municipalities moving forward. That study that we commissioned, we hired Evolved Energy Research, who also wrote the UN's deep decarbonization study, and they kind of came away with three key things for economy-wide pathways towards a clean energy future. And these are not necessarily just PGE focused, so it's in general as an economy, what can we do to help move towards a more clean future. The booklet that the counselor is holding up right now is kind of a quick overview and synopsis of what that study found. And then the second piece is kind of building upon that. So we are in the process of developing a series of white papers that examine the different aspects that are included in that deep decarb analysis. So moving on to kind of what does that look like? So there's three things, as I mentioned. The first one is really focusing on generating electricity from more renewable sources. So we are Oregon's largest electricity supplier, so we play an important role in that conversation. And as you can see on your slides, we have a little graph that shows what our goal is, and our goal is to cut our greenhouse gas emissions by more than 80% by 2050. So in terms of what that looks like, it looks like going more to more renewable resources. It also has us participating in the energy imbalance market, which I'll touch on in a little bit, and then really looking at how do we work with our partners to get to that goal. 40% of our power already comes from carbon-free resources right now. And as a note, we are the #1 renewable program in the country. 20% of our PGE customers voluntarily buy 100% green power. So that's something that's currently available.
What was that number again?
20% of PGE customers voluntarily buy 100% green energy. So
they pay extra.
Correct. Yep.
Okay.
So on your bill now, you can choose to do that.
I had a young gentleman stop by a couple of weeks ago and offer me that.
Yeah.
Okay,
So
thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. We are also closing our Boardman plant in 2020. And then we just recently issued a renewable RFP to build approximately 100 megawatts average to add that into our portfolio as well. So there's a whole bunch of kind of things that we're looking at as ways to help decarbonize our own energy mix in terms of generation.
So the Boardman plant, that's not the biomass. You guys still have the biomass?
coal.
You have the coal plant, but you have the...
Boardman is coal.
And their biomass?
We had a Trojan nuclear plant, but that was closed down several years ago. So our energy sources, our energy mix after the Boardman plant goes away will be hydro, natural gas, wind, solar.
So do you, I'm sorry, do you have gas turbines at the Boardman plant? You're closing the coal portion or the whole plant?
We're just closing the coal.
The coal.
Okay,
Yeah.
so the Boardman turbines are still
so
going?
the wind facilities we have at Biglow and our other facilities out there are still operational, the
Okay.
wind facilities. It's only the coal portion. that's
Okay,
closed.
thanks.
And then this kind of the second pillar is empowering our customers to help with their green energy choices. So what that looks like is, as I mentioned before, several of our cities are looking at how do they have the path to 100% renewable power. So we have recently filed with the PUC a green tariff, which essentially would allow municipalities to purchase additional funding towards actually building a new renewable facility within the state of Oregon. So that's one way that we're doing that. And then we're also looking at kind of what are the technology advances that are happening and how can we help our partners and our customers be set up for success with the technology that's already evolving. So as an example, the Nest thermostats are something that a lot of people have heard about. Honeywell also has them. There's a whole bunch of different kind of automatic technology now that's available. We are able to leverage those as part of a way to help us manage demand in our system. So if you have one of those systems now and you're a PGE customer, you can go onto our website, you can sign up, and we pay you $75 a year to essentially allow us to partner with those systems to help us control load during peak times. So for example, instead of everybody in the early morning hours cranking up their heat in the winter months, the heat system would modify slightly so it would be a little bit cooler, not noticeable at 3 degrees, but it helps us manage the load that we have in terms of that peak usage. As we look at meeting those goals for the future, the studies show that what's called demand response is a key component of helping us meet those goals for the future in terms of managing the load needs going forward. Electric transportation is another key component of that. Transportation electrification is a big component of the economy-wide way to reduce carbon in the environment. So transportation is the largest contributor of that. So looking at ways to encourage EV ownership, we have a pilot of 6 electric avenues that will be deployed throughout our service territory. The first one was announced in Milwaukee a couple of months ago, and we were looking for those other, 5, those other locations to move forward with. So those will be deployed throughout our service territory. The governor, I'm sure you're aware, has a goal of 50,000 EVs by 2020, so we have committed to looking to help the governor meet that goal as well. As a side note, we are seeing more manufacturers moving that way, and so, for example, by 2020, Volvo has committed to making only EVs, and we're seeing that with other manufacturers as well. So part of how we partner with our municipalities is doing things like ride and drive events with our partner Forth. So actually getting people into an EV and to see what that looks like. A lot of people are under the impression that EVs are Teslas and there aren't a lot of other options available, and there's quite a wide variety of options available in terms of price and range, hybrid models, that kind of thing. And then the last pathway is modernizing the grid, and this goes back to kind of that technology piece that I mentioned before. Today, the kind of interaction is pretty straightforward. It's one way. We create energy. It goes on transmission to our customers on poles and wires, and then you have electricity. The future will look very different. It will be a combination of customers having solar and battery on their homes, and that tying in with the grid. it will be demand response, like I mentioned before. So in terms of what the future of electricity world looks like, it looks very different than what it looks like today. So we are doing things now to improve our system and infrastructure to be able to allow for those types of things as we move forward. As part of that, we have security and resiliency components that play into that, so making sure that we have critical infrastructure protection, that we're prepared for natural disasters. We are looking at, we have a pilot proposed with the PUC right now to look at microgrids, which would essentially create that opportunity for resiliency in a natural disaster situation. So there are several things that we're pursuing with the PUC in terms of pilot programs to help us get to that next level of what does that look like to help meet our needs for the future for our customers and also for PGE. And then I mentioned the energy imbalance market, and that's kind of just a piece that I'll kind of end on, and I think that's a really important piece. It's kind of a cool thing that we did. So in the end of 2017, we joined the energy imbalance market, and essentially what it is all of the folks kind of on the west are all connected together. So if California has excess solar, we're able to say we need your energy production, and we're able to purchase it cheaper than we would be able to produce our own energy, for example. So it's helping manage peak load times, it's helping us manage regular load, and it maintains price sensitivity for our customers. So it's a technology advancement that is a pretty cool thing, and it results in cost savings for our customers. So that's something that it brings in renewables across the West. So if there are, excess in one place, then you can use it in another place. And the last thing I will add is just the maintenance of safe and reliable service. We're doing those necessary improvements. So looking at replacing old electrical equipment, upgrading substations that need to be upgraded, adding infrastructure to meet the need moving forward, and then bolstering our IT systems to, again, protect against cyber threats, improving physical security. So the last slide just kind of hits those same 5 things again, which essentially are the guiding principles that we are using moving forward. So clean, connected, equitable, affordable, and accessible to all. Any questions I can answer for you guys?
Any questions?
I should say.
No? I guess no questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brooke. All right. The next presentation is Clackamas County Public Health Tobacco Retail Licensing, Dawn Emmerich.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello.
Welcome to Gladstone.
Thank you. I have Dr. President joining me up here this morning. Hi. Or this
Hello.
wow. She said afternoon, I just said morning. They work us too hard. They work us too hard. Good evening, everyone. I'm Dawn Emmerich, Director of Public Health for Clackamas County.
And I'm Dr. Sarah President. I'm the Public Health Officer for Clackamas County.
We're here to talk to you about tobacco retail licensing, and I'll give you a little bit of brief history. I'm going to kind of tee it up a little bit with a little bit of information, and then Dr. President is going to take over and give you a little bit more of the detail. So, thank you. This is like really intimidating. So, in the last legislative session, there were 2 significant public health bills that were submitted to legislature. Number 1 was Tobacco 21, which was the bill that would require the age to purchase tobacco and nicotine products to raise it from 18 to 21. Currently, or at that time, to purchase alcohol, you had to be 21, and to purchase marijuana, you had to be 21, but to purchase tobacco or any type of nicotine, it was 18. So Tobacco 21 was presented to try to get all of these things up to par with one another, equal with one another. Another bill that was being put into the process as well was an accompanied bill for tobacco retail licensing. One passed, one didn't. As you know, in January of this year, Tobacco 21 did pass, and it was implemented as of January this year. So now, when you go into a retailer is going to be required to ask that purchaser, who looks just like alcohol, show your ID, and you are not allowed to purchase that unless you are 21 or older. The tobacco retail licensing bill did not pass at the state level. The tobacco retail licensing is the regulatory or the enforcement arm of Tobacco 21. Currently, right now, if you want to sell tobacco or any type of nicotine product, such as a Juul, which I'll show you in a bit, you do not have to have a license. So we do not know who is selling tobacco in the county, or really in the state. So we know where alcohol is being purchased. I heard your consent agenda. There is an approval of an alcohol license. As of right now, tobacco, you do not need to have one. So therefore, how are we able to enforce Tobacco 21 if you don't know where it's being sold? We have no idea. So since that legislation did not pass, Tobacco 21 did, but tobacco retail licensing did not. Each county then had the authority to come back into their own county and to work with stakeholders to pass their own county ordinance around tobacco retail. And that's why we're here. We're here because Clackamas County Public Health, along with the county commissioners, as well as many, many other stakeholders, and city councils prior to you, have dedicated and committed that this is important to Clackamas County. We care about our youth. This is not about the 55-year-old who chooses to smoke and chooses to go and purchase. This is about our young people who are under the age of 21. And I'm going to let Dr. President handle all of the clinical piece of what nicotine does and why this is really important. But that is really why we're here. We are really looking for your support to help us pass a local ordinance in Clackamas County so that we can be sure that our young people under the age of 21 are indeed not having access to tobacco or nicotine product. So that just kind of tees it up a little bit. So today's goals really are to, again, to explain what tobacco retail licensing is, what the benefits are, and then ask for your support. We are asking for a resolution from each city council, and so we would love to hear your feedback at the end of the presentation. So I'm going to pass this over to Dr. President.
Thank you, Dawn. So I'll start with explaining a little bit more about what tobacco retail licensing looks like. So it would require all businesses, including large retailers, convenience stores, gas stations, pharmacies, bars, and others that would sell tobacco or nicotine products to purchase a license. The education would be provided by Clackamas County Public Health Division and can take many forms, including online trainings and one-on-one technical assistance. A licensing fee would be required to cover the cost of our program administering the license, educating the retailers, and conducting compliance checks. And the enforcement system includes regular inspections and potentially penalties with the possibility of suspension of a license to sell tobacco. Any violation of tobacco control law is a violation of tobacco retail licensing and could lead to civil penalties. Excuse me. Oh, thank you so much. So Dawn talked a little bit about how this really is about keeping tobacco and nicotine products out of the hands of our youth. We know that youth are vulnerable to nicotine. We know that in the last Oregon Healthy Teen Survey in 2017, 25% of Clackamas County 11th graders said that they had used any tobacco product in the last month. 41 said that they'd used tobacco before the age of 18, and 1 in 3 said that getting tobacco would be very easy. We know that there are a lot of new products that are really targeted directly at youth, and we know that 90% of smokers begin smoking before the age of 18. Part of this is because the adolescent brain is in a state of development that actually makes it more likely to become addicted to addictive substances. So if you start introducing an addictive substance into an 18-year-old brain compared to a 27-year-old brain, the 18-year-old is more likely to actually become addicted to that substance. And we also know that one of the strongest predictors of smoking initiation in youth is their perception of easy access. So I wanted to talk a little bit more about some of the products that are actually being marketed to our teens. Public Health has done a lot of really good, has made a lot of really good progress in decreasing tobacco smoking through a number of different policy and education efforts in the last decades. since we've known that it's actually unhealthy for us and can kill us. Electronic cigarettes is something that is really quite new and is actually growing very quickly.
May I first?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Adolescents of all ages have shown an increased use in e-cigarettes since 2013, despite a decrease in tobacco cigarette use.
If parents cannot tell, teachers cannot tell whether this is a jump drive or whether this is a nicotine product. Kids put it right into their laptop to charge the device. The device goes into here for charging. Goes right into the laptop. This is the actual device that is being inhaled, along with the flavored liquid. This is the flavored liquid that goes into the device, and this is what we're concerned with from the marketing perspective because of the flavors. No different than marijuana. You have the edibles that we're really concerned about with marijuana. This is the flavored nicotine and tobacco. One of my favorite desserts is creme brulee. There's a flavor, creme brulee. That's right here, in here. So I'm going to just pass this around while Dr. President is still discussing, and then you can just take a look at that, and I'll come back around and get it.
So similar to what Dawn just said, one of our concerns about marijuana is the edibles, where it's harder to know what the dosage is. A Juul pod, one of those pods, contains as much nicotine as a full pack of cigarettes. However, a study of adolescents recently found, so this is Juul users aged 15 to 24, found that 63% of them didn't know that those products always contain nicotine. So they are ingesting an addictive substance, not necessarily knowing that it's there, and there's a lot of it in there. Most common way that youth get the Juul is through retail locations rather than online or that sort of thing. And nearly 3/4 of our youth said that they attained Juul at a store or a retail outlet, one that we would want to be licensing and giving education to through this program. So our epidemiologists have mapped across our 10 health equity zones the locations of schools, the locations of tobacco retailers that we do know about, in relation to the population density of people under the age of 21. And here is a picture of Gladstone. The green dots there are the schools, the red dots are tobacco retail locations that we know about, and then the color gradation is the population under 21. So we do know about these because our tobacco prevention and education program staff assessed tobacco retailers across the county by just driving around the county and going door to door and finding out if people sell tobacco or not. If we did have a licensing program, it would be much more efficient for our program to know where these retailers are. And we found that 91% of the retailers across Clackamas County sold the little cigars, which are also aimed often at youth. They're easy to get. You can get them one at a time. 72% sold e-cigarettes, and nearly all of these e-cigarettes have flavors that are attractive to youth. So I hope that I'm making the point pretty clear about our concerns here. So many people do think that tobacco isn't a big issue anymore. Like I said, public health has made a lot of amazing has made good directions in decreasing cigarette use across our population. However, tobacco use is still the leading cause of preventable death. So nationwide, cigarette smoking is responsible for more deaths per year than gun violence, HIV, motor vehicle crashes, and opioid overdoses combined. You can see on this, in Clackamas County, it gives some statistics about the numbers who smoke and the potential financial impact of that. In our Clackamas County Community Health Assessment done in 2017, the top three, you can see the top 3 causes of death are major cardiovascular disease, cancer, and chronic lower respiratory disease, or emphysema, or COPD. All 3 are tobacco-related diseases. Back to tobacco retail licensing and why we think that this is an effective policy approach to help decrease youth access. It's an opportunity to build a relationship with our tobacco retailers. So we really like to look at this program as similar to our restaurant inspection program. So food, pool, lodging. Licensing is done through the Clackamas County Public Health Division. We do make good relationships with our retailers and work with them to ensure that they know how to best keep their customers safe. We are not punitive. We do not do fines or any other actions unless really needed, but we always will work first on education and trying to help the retailer do the right thing on their own. The Oregon Health Authority is authorized to enforce the minimum age of tobacco sales and works with Oregon State Police to conduct compliance and, excuse me, I'm tripping over my words here, compliance inspections. However, capacity and resources at the state mean that not all of our retailers are inspected every year. In Clackamas County, in 2016-17, there were 86 retailers total that were inspected, and 12 of them, or 14%, sold tobacco to minors. So these are minor decoys that will go in and attempt to buy tobacco products. Tobacco retail licensing in Clackamas County would ensure that the Public Health Division can augment the state system so that every retailer is inspected annually. Our proposal would have 2 inspections per year. One of them would be a minor decoy, and the other one would be our Public Health Division staff going in for education and enforcement and working with the retailers. We know that that this is effective in decreasing illegal sales to minors. So the American Lung Association Center for Tobacco Policy and Organizing did a study of 33 California communities after they passed a strong tobacco retail licensing law, and almost all of them saw a decrease in sales to minors, and over 50% of them saw a decrease of over 30% in their sales to minors after strong tobacco retail licensing. There are 4 other counties in Oregon that have passed tobacco retail licensing: Benton, Klamath, Lane, and Multnomah. So we are looking to our sister counties as well as to other programs around the country to make sure that we are proposing a strong program. Oregon is one of only 9 states in the country that does not have a statewide tobacco retail licensing program. The lessons that we've learned from our other counties is that it is most effective if done county-wide. So this would decrease a patchwork of ordinances across the county. It would ensure uniform education and ensure uniform inspections for our retailers. But because of this, we do know that the support from the city leaders is crucial to successfully pass this, because it needs to be really a county-wide approach with everybody's involvement and everybody's buy-in. We also know that the license fee needs to be high enough to cover both the education and the enforcement piece. Some of our other counties have put in a licensing fee that does not fully cover the cost of the program, therefore the enforcement arm of it is not as strong as they would like it to be. And we also have learned that Public Health Authority is the best position to implement tobacco retail licensing as opposed to another division within the county government. Most of this is because we already do have a lot of experience with our restaurant licensing program. I'd like to talk about the financial impact of tobacco retail licensing. So the Public Health Division contracted the Portland State University's Northwest Economic Research Center to determine the economic impact of tobacco retail licensing. We determined that over the entire county, a total of 4.12 FTE would be decreased, which would lead to a reduction of a total of $129,000 across the county. Gladstone would expect to see a 0.1 FTE decrease in employment and a decrease in gross wages of $3,306. The annual licensing fee would be $500 to $600, which equates to $1.37 to $1.64 per day to sell tobacco or nicotine products. We know that the impact on store revenue would be minimal because the retailers are able to raise tobacco prices or adjust prices of other store items to offset the cost. So we believe, and I hope you agree, that the benefit far exceeds the financial impact on businesses. And with that, we'd like to ask for any questions that you may have. And thank you for hearing our presentation.
Councillor Milch.
Is this something that the Board of County Commissioners can adopt for the county? Do individual cities have to also pass it with a vote in order for it to be effective countywide?
That's a great question. So let me see if I can explain it without being confusing. The answer to that is that the Board of County Commissioners or the Board of Health does not have the countywide authority to impose this law on you. This is part of the reason why we are coming to each city. You can choose to have a resolution which we would love to have a resolution that would be submitted to in front of you and voted on that you would adopt. If you adopt it, then we would be able to have a relationship with your retailers in Gladstone to come and do the enforcement and also the education. If you choose not to do the resolution, then the state would be doing the enforcement, not the local county. Because remember that the state is doing all of the enforcement, but they don't have enough people to actually cover the entire state. So local counties are saying, this is a local issue. We want to have the relationships with our local businesses and with our local elected officials, so let's pass a local ordinance. If we don't pass it, then the state will be the enforcers.
Okay. Jackie?
So what I was going to suggest is I know that the Clackamas County city managers are going to be talking about what are your jurisdictions going to do. And so I know there's a sample resolution. I'd like to get some feedback from what the other city managers are going to do in the county. And then if it's something that the council wants to endorse, we could put it on a future agenda for you to do that.
Okay, I think that sounds fair.
I agree, but I have a question
Sure.
too, if I may. So you mentioned about that you don't know who's selling tobacco products in the county. So, and this is all new to me. So how does the state or maybe that's, or the county doesn't have a tobacco tax then, is that correct? So, you know, like, you know, a cigarette tax.
So the state has the cigarette tax.
Right.
This is such a great question because we've been getting it a lot.
Okay, so continue.
I think I might know what you're going to ask.
Go ahead.
Is if they're collecting taxes, wouldn't you know where they are if they're collecting?
Exactly.
So, great question, and the answer to that is it's the wholesalers that are getting taxed. It's not the local retailers. So we do not have that information.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It's so interesting, isn't it?
So, it is. It
and
is.
not to mention, these are not taxed.
That was my
right.
So you don't, these are not taxed. So if you are just a vape seller, there's no trace. There's no tax at all.
Interesting. So then my other question was, what outreach have you done about bringing this to school districts, you know, like the high schools?
Yeah.
And the reason I bring that up is just the last 7 weeks I taught summer school at Benson with juniors and seniors, and I know several of them are smokers.
So we've been able to reach out to a couple of the superintendents individually. You know, they've been out of school, and so we have a great relationship with Jada at the administrator level, that they have the superintendent meetings every month, but school has been out. So our timelines have not really meshed. We would like to present a policy session to the county commissioners in early October, so our timing has not sort of jived a little bit to get in front of all the superintendents. But the ones that we have spoken with, they absolutely support it. They would come in. They have already told us that they would come in and provide testimony at the policy session in front of the county commissioners, and they believe it's a real distraction. Because of the jewels, they can put them right in the pockets and smoke in the bathrooms, and that is not, that is against policy. So it is a distraction, so they do support it, the ones that we have spoken with.
Thank you.
Any
Yes.
other questions?
How is the county going to, so there's a lot of unincorporated Clackamas County, so the county still has to weigh in at some point, right? They just can't do it for the cities?
That is correct. So when Dr. President was talking about the best approach is to do this countywide, is so that everything is, you know, so we have the entire county. If we're not able to get the majority of the cities to buy in and to do the resolution, two things: the state will enforce you, so we already mentioned that, and then we would then be we would enforce this and in the unincorporated. So that would be our area. That's not the ideal, because then you have two different types of relationships with the businesses, because you have the state relationship and then the county relationship. We would not be able to enforce in any other city other than the unincorporated.
So then the county, or the state is pretty much then, in these 4 counties, hands off, using their funds and manpower in other areas that haven't, then,
Correct.
I would assume.
Correct.
All right. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. And just by the way, you are our last presentation, so we have met with every single city council, with the exception of Oregon City. And so we're doing a different outreach with them. We weren't able to get onto their calendar in time, but we just want to thank you very, very much for allowing us to do this and to have an opportunity to speak with you. So thank you.
Thank you.
John, could I have the sample resolution?
There you go. All right, next, do we have any agenda additions or corrections?
No, Madam Mayor.
All right, so before we start, I'd like to say a few words regarding the City Council. I wrote this a couple different ways. It's very important that everyone understand our limitations. I think the first most important limitation is that we're sitting here representing the citizens of Gladstone, not our own personal agendas and beliefs, and it's very important that you understand that. There have been a lot of times when a decision being made doesn't quite align with what our personal beliefs are, but after hearing citizens and their desires, we've gone another direction. And that doesn't mean that our personal beliefs have changed, just that means that we've listened and acted accordingly. As we discuss and consider matters, there are laws and rules we have to use as the basis of our decisions. These start at the federal state level, then filter down to our city's comp plan, city charter, codes, and ordinances. We do not have the luxury of randomly making decisions, but instead we have to make decisions that are defensible. And I want you all to know that we appreciate the time that you've taken to be here. We're going to hold our comment until the end of the meeting after business from the audience. My goal is to keep this meeting respectful and engaging. I hope you all can help us do that. Thank you. So business from the audience. Tammy?
Bill Osborne.
Hi, Bill Osborne. On that last presentation, I just want to say we definitely need to keep tobacco, I think, out of kids' hands. On the other hand, that's put up to a vote of the people, so that would be something I think would be great if you guys are looking at doing, to potentially put to the vote of the residents of Gladstone. Now for what I come up here for, Councilor Neese, the last regular session meeting, you read a letter from the Oregon State Ethics Commission saying that you didn't do anything wrong based on a complaint that I filed. And as you know, there was a 6-page response in that where you just read the 1-page letter. Originally, it does say that there was wrongdoing. You went through on your statement of economic interest and changed it. It's here. I sent everybody a copy of this. It was late in the day, so I don't know that you received received it yet. But for you to sit up there and say that, you know, you weren't guilty or didn't do any of these things, it's a lie, and it's disrespectful to the people out here. What it says is that you did make mistakes. You didn't put things down, that you were required by law to do so, and that after being notified, you and your attorney corrected that, and that after it was corrected, they seen no reason to proceed further. Also at the training session here, this Saturday, it was mentioned that I put down Councilor Reisner and Mayor Stempel's names as supporting a letter I wrote to the OFRW. On here I put personal references for me and Patrick Mathis and the only reason I wrote a letter to them is because it was told to them that Patrick Mathis was a crackpot who was coming up with all these accusations that weren't true. And I wrote a letter in support of the accusations that he made, because they were factual. You know, there's been a lot of issues here, and I get up here quite frequently and say things and tend to rub some of you the wrong way. One of the big problems we have is there's no process. The complaint comes in, the city administrator sends out a letter or an email to you guys to decide whether you want to investigate yourselves or not. And it's no surprise in one of the last incidences, it was regarding Councilor Neese, that out of 7 of you, only 2 of you, Mayor Stempel and Councilor Reisner, said that, yeah, we should look into this. Now, if any complaints come in against any of you as our elected officials, they should be looked into. And there needs to be a process, a clear process in place that is transparent. Councilor Neese, I know you get tired of hearing me bully you, as you like to put it, because I point out facts. Perhaps if you just took accountability. You've never once said, you know what, I did this stuff, I screwed up. Everybody makes mistakes. Instead, you say I was innocent of this or I didn't do that, when the evidence shows different.
Time's up.
So,
Thank you.
again, thank you. Just look forward to maybe some processes being put into place, and that would help build trust, and I'd have to get up here less.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next.
Frank Hernandez.
Hello, my name is Frank Hernandez. As some of you know, I'm running for City Council. Because of this, I attended the August 11th workshop intended to assist council members in being more effective. I felt that if I were elected City Council, I should be aware of strategies that would help me transition into the council and bring balance and effectiveness. At the workshop, a representative of the council accused me of taking legal action against the city. As I have stated publicly and also in my response article to when Steve Johnson made the same accusation, it is quite clear that this never happened. I do admit filing a grievance with the city. When the ACLU contacted me regarding a civil suit, I chose not to pursue the legal action to reduce the divisiveness in the community. I did this in the best interest of the city of Gladstone. Now it would be easy to overreact to a member of the council demonstrating a lack of ethics by impugning me with accusations that are knowingly false and most likely libel, and I am sure intended to negatively impact my campaign for City Council. I also realize that making this statement will result in attacks on my credibility by the council member supporters in the community and on the council. It is always easy to get into a mudslinging contest, but I have always held myself to a higher moral standard. I have always held the best interest of the members of every agency I have managed over my own interest as a teacher, principal, program director for the Oregon Department of Ed, program director for the U.S. Department of Ed, and as project director for the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. I have attempted to do this with the city of Gladstone as well. This is the heart of my success as administrator and my campaign for City Council. I cannot force my ethics on the members of the City Council. However, it would be appropriate for the Council to disavow the accusation of extortion and publicly and formally apologize. Unfortunately, the audio of the meeting failed, so the community is unable to hear the councilor's accusations or Mayor Stemple's efforts to get the offending councilor to withdraw her statement. I will use the remainder of my time to allow the members of the City Council an opportunity to publicly disavow the accusation and offer an individual apology.
Anyone like to say anything?
Just to clarify, the matter that came up at that meeting was in the context of a discussion about attorney's fees and occasion to consult with our city attorney regarding matters that come before it. And the letter regarding a demand for $25,000 to settle your grievance was a matter that was referred to the city attorney. And that was the context in which that discussion came. So I hope you'll understand that we did consult our attorney on that because it sounded to us at the time like the threat of a lawsuit.
And again, it was a grievance asking for compensation. That's different. So you can defend that, that's fine. But the term extortion, that's a federal crime. I was accused of a federal crime. That is inappropriate.
For demanding money from the city. So we all saw it, and the public has seen it.
And again, I knew that my credibility would be attacked, but did I commit a federal crime of extortion?
No.
Then there should be
and and let's get honest here. You're referring to me because I'm the one that used the word extortion. And it came out of the context of the way, and it's the way it sounded. If you want a public apology, I apologize, but you still demanded $25,000 from the city to be paid.
So you did apologize for making that statement?
I just apologized for using the word extortion. I won't apologize for the rest of it because I feel you were wrong.
That is fine. I appreciate that apology.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. There was no audio, mistakenly. And that entered into the records too.
Next,
Bob Everett.
Dr. Bob.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening. So, hello, counselors, Mayor Stemple, Jackie, and everyone here. I'll try to make it a little bit lighter. You probably know what I'm going to be talking about. I'm going to be talking about the festival, and I think it was a success. You know, I sometimes, as I work along, I don't really take a sort of a full view of the events that went on. But I know we had a lot more cars this year. I don't know exactly how many, but I know we had more. We certainly seemed to have more people in the park, and I had a number of favorable comments, quite a few, and it sounded like the parade went very well too. And I'm always sorry that I can't view the parade as I'm doing things as I'm running around, but it sounded like it was bigger and better than ever. And we were all worried that it was even going to come off. You know, sometimes you just wonder about things. But I do have a number of people, like every year, individuals that I do like to thank, and I always start at the top, and that's the city. What the city does for us and for me is priceless. I can't put into words the help that everybody has given me throughout the whole everything, every single department. They're very supportive. If I have a question, they're always there for me. The police this year certainly, they had an incident that they took care of very quickly, and that was greatly appreciated. I also want to thank B&B Leasing, Gladstone Disposal. For the first time since I've been a part of this, we had 2 full dumpsters, and that was Saturday, and I was a little concerned. So about 9:30, 10 o'clock, I called them and left a message. And I think I got into bed about 11:30 that night, midnight, and I was up at 5 worrying about garbage and thinking I was going to have to transport some garbage around to different places, like my house. And about 6:45, in comes a truck. It was like Savior, the White Knights, in the way of garbage, because they came in and picked up both those dumpsters on a Sunday morning at 6:45. Now, I call that service. Now, I call that, I can't say enough about them. I also can't say enough about our sponsors, and I hope people do take a chance to go visit GladstoneCommunityFestival.org and see all the sponsors, because without them, we really couldn't put this on. Les Schwab was terrific this year. Excuse me, we had a large number of sponsors, and also all the committee that I work with. They're just wonderful, and they work very, very hard. And put in a lot of time. So anyway, I'm not quite done, and that's fine. I'm finished anyway, but thank you very much, and we're already planning for next year. Pickleball tournament, it sounds like that may happen, and we'll have a few more things that sort of go on. And I was happy to see the beer garden hopefully was a success. I haven't heard totally, but it seemed to be, and it did not create any problems, and I was very happy at that. Anyway, thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cars was 241.
Hang on there for a second.
Okay.
The answer to your question was we sold 242 tickets for cars this year, and we only had one bad check.
That was mine, huh?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
And we had someplace between 10 and 27 cars that didn't pay. But compared to last year, it was someplace around 212.
Yeah.
So
there were a lot more people down there too. It was jam-packed.
Great.
So,
Thank you.
Fantastic.
the overall number, I have not got all the numbers yet.
Okay. Look forward to hearing that.
All right.
All right.
Next,
Thanks, Tom.
Tammy.
More.
$400 to $6,500 is going to go to donations. So.
Thank you. Okay, next.
Sherry Hall.
I'll try to be quick. This is just kind of an announcement that we in elections have bought 23 new outdoor drop boxes for ballots, and all of the drop boxes up to this point have been mailbox style that we've converted into ballot drop boxes. And there's now a company in Washington who builds these just for ballots. They're made to withstand the northwest weather, so we shouldn't be getting any wet ballots back that we have to duplicate to run them through the tally machines. And they're very sturdy metal and very sealed all the way around. And we're going to put one in Gladstone where the old mailbox one went. And I kind of want to just talk about Gladstone because you have a civic center that you're building and we want to ask for a space there. But with the one that's on the corner out here, we will have a private contractor come in. We've talked to Jim Wynot about this, and we have permission for everything. But we're going to put the cement pad there where the old one was and have the new one installed. And we want to leave it year-round and not have it moved inside off election time and put back during election time. We're going to do that with all 23 of them so that as voters are out and about, they'll know where to go to drop their ballot when it's time. And you're building the Civic Center, so when that's done, we want to move the box down there. And I have some information on that, and I don't know, I didn't make one for everybody, but who's like the one that schedules the meetings with the people? Is that Tammy?
Jackie.
I mean Jackie?
Yes.
Okay. So I'll just give you this.
Thank you.
But we've looked at the plan because you guys have two possible plans, and so there's red where we would like the box to go.
Okay.
And we want it to be a drive-up box because that works for everyone who's handicapped and can't get out of their car. If we have just a walk-up box, then it'll work for everybody that can get to it, but the handicapped won't be able to get to it. So
okay.
That kind would be good. The one on the corner here is going to be installed by the first week of October, so it'll be ready for the November election.
Wonderful.
Okay.
Thank you.
I have a question. With that being there, so when we do our new facilities, this will be brought out?
We're going to talk about it again because
Okay.
we're tracking how many ballots come into each box. And so there's a few cities that we're moving some. And here you have one in the library, and then you have one right across the street. So we only need this one, and the one in the library will come out. All of the indoor boxes are coming out because they have office hours, and voters don't always know when those are, but these will be 24/7 when you can drop the ballot in.
Okay.
So we'll talk again after that building is done.
Wonderful.
Okay.
Thank you. Perfect
Thank
timing.
You.
I wanted to let you know I do have two additional, but they're for agenda items.
Okay, perfect. So just make sure we don't forget to call them up.
Agenda item 9 and 12.
Okay. So next is our consent agenda. Do we have any discussion? Will someone make a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll make a motion we approve the consent agenda.
Second?
I'll second.
Motion was made by Councilor Neese and seconded by Councilor Milch to approve the consent agenda. Any additional discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Consent agenda passed. Correspondence. We did have one thing come in.
You do have one item on your dais tonight on water testimony for agenda item number 9.
Okay, so we'll just talk about that then. All right, first item on our regular agenda is public hearing for Resolution 1144, updates to the Transportation System Development Charges. We are to consider approving Resolution 1144, approving updates to Transportation System Development Charges. Staff.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is starting to seem a little bit like Groundhog Day with our SDCs. I am glad to say that this is our last one. We have done our water, our sewer, our storm, and our parks. This is our transportation system SDC update. So we adopted our transportation system plan in December of last year, which is what's the basis for this SDC methodology. We contracted with SCS Group, and John Ghilarducci is our consultant that put that together, as he did all of our other SDCs. So we gave the 90-day notice starting back in May, and the report has been available for 60 of that 90 days, which we made available in June. And as of today, there has been no comments received from the public. And with that, I'm going to let John do a short presentation similar to what he's done in the past. This one will be more geared towards transportation, and hopefully it'll answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Mayor and Council. So I'm going to abridge the background because I know you're familiar with system development charges. I'll get right into the calculation summary, talk about how these charges are applied for transportation, briefly touch on some of the key inputs, and then we'll look at comparables around the region. You know what they are.
Mm-hmm.
Paid by development, new development, and in some cases redevelopment. The mechanism for growth, paying for growth. We've followed very carefully Oregon statute as well as case law. There's a lot of case law out there since 1991, and we adhere to it to keep you out of trouble. There are two components in a system development charge. The reimbursement fee is intended to be a buy-in to existing capacity, that is, capacity in transportation infrastructure that's already been built, if there's any unused capacity. The improvement fee is all about the transportation system plan, the list of projects in that plan, and the growth-related portion of each of those projects is what we can include in the improvement fee calculation. So once we've identified those eligible costs for each of these fees, we divide it by the growth that they will serve, and that gives us the two individual fees. In this case, the much larger fee is the improvement fee because it comes right out of that transportation system plan. There's very little unused capacity in the existing transportation system. But together, the two fees equal the system development charge. Once we have that, I guess we also make sure by approaching the calculation very carefully that we're not double charging for any capacity by charging the two fees together. What we're trying to do is say, for that new unit of growth, the SDC represents the amount of system capacity that's needed to serve that new development. Some of it's already been built, some of it is still to be built, but together it's one share of capacity. This is a summary of the actual calculation. You see at the top of the table the reimbursement fee calculation. We really, the only way that we could identify unused capacity in the existing system was by looking at what the city had built with system development charges in the past. So we had that number and we're able to adjust for what capacity is remaining from those expenditures. $90,000, which is not a substantial reimbursement fee basis, divided by the growth in average daily person trips. That's what that projection is, 21,747 average daily person trips. So the result of that math is $4 per average daily person trip, a modest reimbursement fee. For the improvement fee, that's a different story. There's almost 120 different projects in the transportation system plan, totaling almost $33 million. Of that, about $5.6 million was identified as capacity increasing to meet the needs of future users, and it had to be Gladstone's responsibility. So there were a number of these projects that it was anticipated the state would partner if it was on an ODOT facility. In some cases, other cities in the region would be partnering. So we took out those external funded shares, and this is just Gladstone's responsibility and the growth-related share of it. So we take out any existing fund balance because that money's already been collected and is available to spend on those projects, again, to eliminate any double charging. And the result, as you see there, almost $5.3 million in eligible improvement fee costs. Again, divided by that growth in average daily person trips, gives us our improvement fee of $243 per average daily person trip. And I'll show you in just a minute how these are actually applied to different customer types. The one other important component on this table, you see at the second line from the bottom there, compliance fee. One thing that the law allows you to do is to recover the cost of this study, the cost of administering the program, and so that's the calculated compliance fee. You're paying yourself back for the administration of the charge. So the way that the city would apply these is by knowledge of the developing establishment's land use, in the case of a commercial establishment, and the size in gross square footage. For a single-family residence and all different types of residential housing, it's per dwelling unit and it's applied uniformly. So this is just a very small subset of the long list, very specific list of land uses and the resulting charges by land use type. So in the case of a single-family dwelling unit, the average daily person trips, 14.15. Sorry, are you having trouble finding it? Do you want me to wait for a minute?
Page 814, near the middle of the chart.
Oh, okay, so we went back. Thank you.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Oh, thank you.
So, if you skip to the middle there of the table, person trips, that is the average daily person trips by land use for these four. We also take out pass-by trips. So most retail land uses, it's known that people stop there on their way from home to work or work to home. It's not the primary trip. We deduct those. So that's why for shopping center you see 67% not pass-by trips. That's an adjustment we make to take those out. The far right total is the system development charge. So in the case of a single-family dwelling unit, that's $3,536 per single-family dwelling unit. So a new single-family dwelling unit, that would be the charge. For these other ones, it's per 1,000 square feet of either gross floor area or gross leasable area. And again, that's a product of the trip generation and the cost basis.
How does it want to work?
Can you click the next one? So among the important key inputs is growth, and just so you know, that's the denominator in the calculation. We match the growth to the transportation system plan and the assumptions that are in that plan. You can, well, maybe I can't. Oh yeah, back in business. So the reimbursement fee, this just shows the calculation of that cost basis using information that we had on previous expenditures on growth-related facilities. You'll recognize the $90,000 in the lower right-hand corner of the table. And then the improvement fee cost basis, this is just a summary of the long list of capital projects coming out of the TSP. The almost $33 million, deducting for external funding, and then applying the growth-related share to get to that $5.6 million. So to give you an idea of how this result stacks up in the region, what we're comparing here are just single-family residential charges. It's very hard to do commercial unless you have specific establishments that you want to compare. But you see Gladstone, even with the proposed increases, still falls at least in the neighborhood at the lower end of this selection. If we were to go statewide, there are still some outside of the region that, as you can imagine, vary all over the place, but some lower. But again, the one thing I'll caution you about for any kind of comparison is everybody's needs are different. Some of these are undergoing transportation system planning efforts now, or have done so in the distant past, I should say. So their charges could be outdated. So you never know what's going on with other jurisdictions, but I know it's of interest. And that's everything.
All right. Do we have any questions?
How come Tigard's is 16,000? Is there any? I mean, that's a discrepancy between us with a lot more buildable land. Any idea?
They are undergoing, as are some of these other ones, and there are a few area-specific charges that aren't on this list, like South Cooper Mountain and South Hillsborough, where the charges are much, much higher.
Okay.
And so I suspect that in Tigard we had a fresh transportation system plan, and I know that they were looking at area-specific charges in the River Terrace region. So
Or
I don't know what to
Thanks,
sorry, Jack.
Pat.
So I don't know what to tell you except that that's just the math. Yeah, it's just the math, and it depends a lot on how recent the plan is, and because we're finding these costs are going up all around the state.
Who just got a new light also.
Yes, stoplights, yes. I paid for
Yeah.
that.
Jeff.
Questions?
So when we described this as an update, we did have some system development charges related to transportation based on what, the 1995? Okay, very good, thank you.
Right. Yes, next. Do you have questions?
Not really. I answered my own question. I see it's per 1,000 square feet for distribution and fulfillment. I didn't catch that last night. I was looking. Okay.
Yeah, it's an odd part of the table.
Right. Well, and it makes sense
Yeah.
because I mean those things, they can balloon up to 1 million square feet.
Yeah.
Some of them, and so I would assume that it's not just $5,000 for them. Right. Thank you.
And one of the things that wasn't happening before is we were not doing an inflation since 1996 on that, which is our intentions now is to keep that current. So costs go up, right? So every year we'll be looking at, on all of our SDCs, bringing it up by CPI.
Okay.
All right. Would someone like to make a motion?
Sure. I make a motion to approve resolution number 1144, adopting the mythology report and updating our transportation system development charges.
Second.
Motion was made by Councilor Reisner, seconded by Councilor McMahon and Councilor Tracy.
Do we have any discussion?
I was going to ask that next.
Okay,
Do we have
sorry.
any further discussion?
There was another document that came in today at 3:48 this afternoon from the Home Builders Association regarding this update.
I haven't seen anything come in.
Was that
I got
an
it.
email?
I got it as well in my city email, and it was
I-
like probably, like you said, in the late afternoon.
Probably wasn't copied to me or Tammy then. Yeah.
Oh, it might not have been. I didn't.
Yeah.
Just showed up, so yeah.
I haven't seen any correspondence regarding it.
Okay.
He
Any-
just
It
wants,
came.
he just
it-
wants
it-
to, he was asking, I think, just to delay it to January 1st of 2019 is the gist of that
I didn't
letter.
have a chance to read it.
Well, there's an issue with people sending stuff in at the very last
Yeah,
minute.
I
I think
agree.
that needs to be a discussion maybe at the next meeting that, you know, if you don't get your documents into us 24 hours before the meeting, we can't be expected to have enough time to review it or even get it to begin with.
Yep.
Can I ask process check? Doesn't this correspondence typically have to go through the city administrator and is distributed? Otherwise, it's lobbying directly
Right.
to
I mean,
the
you can enter that into the record now, but none of us have looked at it. That's
Oh.
No, I agree.
No, I haven't seen it either. But I was at the fire department thing this afternoon, so.
And the directions in our 60 to 90-day and then 60-day notices to direct those to myself, actually.
Okay.
Okay.
So, and I had not seen that yet, and that's why I made the comment. I have not received any comments to date, so
Okay.
I did not receive that.
All right, thank you. Do we
It
have
went
any?
to Public Works,
and Paul Grove.
Okay, well,
Along
again,
with the council.
well, if he was that concerned, he probably should have got us that letter before the last minute.
But it's not to the city administrator at all, I see.
Whew. All right. Okay, any further discussion?
Yes, do you have Susan listed on speed dial, and have you let her know that we have gotten
Updated all
all
of
of the
her
SDCs updated?
No, I don't. No, I don't. But I hope
Very
she's
happy.
listening.
She'll be very happy.
Yes.
All right, any further discussion? No? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed. So it was unanimous, so now we do the second reading, or we don't have to?
A resolution, you're fine with
Not.
just one.
Okay. Great.
Thanks, George.
Next item is public hearing for ordinance 1492, North Clackamas County Water Commission, NCCWC, District Intergovernmental Agreement, also called the IGA Amendments. Consider approving the NCCWC IGA Amendments. Staff.
Thank you. I'm going to have the city attorney do an overview of the staff report. Councilor Tracy and Public Works Director Wynot, please feel free to chime in when appropriate.
For the record, Madam Mayor, Chad Jacobs from the City Attorney's Office. So I'm just going to briefly, before I get into the meat of the agreement a little bit, I'm just going to talk about the process a little bit so you understand why each of us may be talking at different times. So really what occurred is a lot of the policy discussions happened at the commission. So, you know, Public Works Director Wynot and Councilor Tracy had discussions with the various partners and created the various policies about what should be done and how it should be done. They then relayed that to the attorneys who represented the various groups, and there were 4 attorneys who then got together and crafted the language from the agreement. And I'd have to say it was a very collegial process, that people worked really hard to make sure that we were building relationships, repairing relationships, this is what some people had said, that we had a lot of give and take, and both, you know, people were saying giving up things and taking things and working together to try to make an agreement that everyone could live with. It was a process that that when the attorneys got together and we had questions, we then put that back to the policymakers, and they came back and said this is what we wanted. What we did try to do in drafting this language is 2 things. One is that we tried to just clean up the language but keep it as close to possible as the original language when there wasn't any direction to make a policy change. So we didn't really want to change the language in the existing agreement too much other than to just clean it up for clarity purposes. The other thing that I think really tried to occur, and the biggest changes in this, we'll all get into some of the discussion about what the changes are, is that we tried to make sure that the agreement reflected what's going on today. There's been some changes that have occurred over the last 10 years or so about how the commission is actually operating and running, and we wanted to make sure that the agreement accurately reflected what was going on today. So those were the sort of 2, I guess, marching orders that we as the attorneys got in drafting the language. In looking at what that means, there were some specific changes based on the policies and sort of what's going on today that I'm going to talk about. First and foremost, you know, one of the things, and you've got some public comment on this, is that reflecting what's going on today as far as the ability of the plant to produce water. And originally what we had was an assumption that the plant could produce 25 MGD, and MGD is million gallons per day, so 25 million gallons per day, and when we entered into the agreement in 2005. In 2005, we also bought in at 10% of the assets of the commission. And so based on that 10%, they got the number of 2.5 MGD for the city of Gladstone. Lo and behold, for various reasons, and I'm sure Public Works Director Wynot can explain this much better than I can, but for various deficiencies in the plant, it can actually only produce 20 MGD per day. It doesn't have the ability to produce 25 MGD. So what we are looking at in reality in today's world is sort of how the parties have been operating, is that the city was getting not 2.5 MGD as under the original agreement, but 2.0 MGD. We lost that, you know, 10% worth because it went down 5, so we lost 0.5, which would be our 10%. That language, in the discussions with the attorneys, and, others can chime in if they have more information, but in the discussion with the attorneys, it was my understanding that that language was agreed upon for two reasons. First of all, according to the discussions we had, it really reflected the intent of the parties in 2005, that the percentages of the water capacity that each entity would get would be reflective of the percentage of ownership that they had. So that's matching that 10% number. And so that was the belief of what the intent was back in 2005 when the parties entered into the agreement. I know that we have public comment that suggests that maybe the intent was otherwise. I don't have any information to support that, but if it's something that you want to go back and sort of research further and push that, that's something that, you have the option to do. The other aspect of this is, I do believe it was raised at during the policy discussions about, why couldn't we just keep our 2.5? And my understanding is that the response was that it was a fairness thing, and then if the plant's capacity was decreased, then everyone's share should be decreased on a similar basis. As Councilor Tracy and Public Works Director, why not speak up? They can certainly fill in the gaps of my understanding of that conversation, but at least that gives you a general overview as to why we reached that language of 2.0 instead of 2.5. A couple other big changes that I just want to go over for you. The most significant change, in my opinion, frankly, is that the city was given the right to retain upon dissolution. If NCCWC ever dissolves, the city was given the ability to retain all the water rights it brought to the table originally. When we first came to the table in 2005, we brought 8.9 MGD of water rights to the table. In the 2005 agreement, we gave up some of those water rights. If the NCCWC ever dissolved, we gave up some of those water rights, so we weren't going to get the full 8.9 back. What we were able to do, and I give a lot of credit to Councilor Tracy on this one from my understanding of the discussions, is that we were able to convince the other parties that out of fairness, and the fairness that we were talking about before with decreasing the capacity and everything else, out of fairness, we should really, if dissolution ever were to occur, we should be able to get back the water rights that we brought to the table. And the parties agreed to that. And that, to me, just having worked with lots of other jurisdictions, water rights are gold today. I mean, it's one of those things that, as we move forward and water gets more scarce and more expensive, having water rights is one of the most important things that cities can do, and sort of making sure that you've got those water rights lined up. And the fact that we've been able to re-secure the full amount that we brought to the table is a big win for the city. Another one of the significant changes is the membership of the board itself changed. Previously it was 3-3-1, so the other two parties had 3 representatives and we only had 1 representative. Now it's gone to 2-2-1, so the other parties each have 2 and we have 1. In the overall scheme of things, it doesn't really change that much, because if parties vote as a block, with our vote, we can still create a majority with one of the other parties in either scenario. But it does create it increases the overall percentage of a vote that we have on the commission, and increases arguably the say that we have on the commission. So I thought that was a pretty significant change. Another pretty significant change was we've included language to allow the commission to go purchase water as necessary. If we need to go purchase water because we're not producing enough water for use for our particular users, that we can buy it as the commission now. So that increases our buying power. Previously, we had to go out and buy that on our own. And as a smaller city, we didn't necessarily have the leverage and buying power that we have when we combine with the other entities. So providing that option so we can do it as a group and make sure that we work together as a group to make sure that everyone's getting the water they need should also benefit the city in the long run. I think those were all the ones I wanted to hit. The other sort of question, and we had a conversation with a couple councilors yesterday, the other conversation that I wanted to clarify between the water rights and the ownership is that our 10% ownership really relates to all the assets of the entity, of the commission, of the NCCWC. So, if we would ever get to the point of dissolution, most likely we would receive in return 10% of the value of those assets. But when you look at the water rights, we actually get much more than that, because we're getting the full 8.9 that we brought to the table in the first place. And right now, the commission owns 48.9 MGD and water rights. So we're actually getting a larger percentage. If you did only 10%, we would only get 4.89 water rights back. So, you know, there is that big difference. We're getting a much higher percentage of the water rights back than just the assets. I knew that created a point of confusion for some people in the discussion yesterday, so I want to make sure I clarified that as well. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to, you know, the people who really did the heavy lifting here and got these good deals for the city, and let them make the appropriate comments.
Who's going to be the main speaker?
I can just add some points that I made some of the changes also. Chad did a real good job of covering the biggies. In this agreement, we also have the ability to collect SDCs, establish those in the future, which is huge to pay for any future growth. Also have the ability to add a new member without going through quite the addendum type stuff. So this new agreement allows that. And then there's also a voluntary withdrawal plan. So if somebody decides they want to get out, there's actually a plan in place to do that. So it's not contentious. You got to follow this plan. So it's kind of looking forward, like it says, the next 20 years at any possible changes or anything else. It really did a good job with that, and the attorneys did a good job of crafting that language at the direction of the board. And that's really all I really have to add. I would say Matt did a lot of the heavy lifting on this as a board member. So
I don't have a lot to add. I think that both Chad and Director Wynot have summed it up nicely. I think one of the things Chad did was bring a couple things to light that I'd kind of forgotten about. These conversations went on in a very respectful manner, I might add. I think our partners really reached out to us and felt our I guess hesitancy or tension, and felt, you know, and were very kind in showing us that we might have been one of 5 at the table at the time, but that they were concerned about our rights and what we needed out of this to make our citizens whole. And I appreciate that. Ernie's in the back there. I appreciate everything that the partners did going forward. I pressed on a couple of issues, and I saw a wrinkled brow across the table from me a couple times, and they never said absolutely not, no way. They went back and sharpened the pencils, came back and said, you know, we don't see harm here. So I think from a business perspective and from the city's perspective, Mayor, I think it's good to have those types of partners, and I think this was a great group of people at the table. So I commend Director Wynot for keeping me on track. This was like the movie Christmas Vacation, where Clark goes in and gets the Christmas lights, and they're a big bundled ball like this, and he hands them off to Russ and says, "Here, Russ, fix this." That's how I felt going. Exactly. Here, because it is somewhat outside of my wheelhouse. I've managed IGAs in the past, difficult ones. I was telling Councilor Mercereau about managing large IGAs. This one was really tough to get my head around because there are so many moving parts. So I appreciate Director Wynot, and I appreciate Ernie and the rest of the folks who helped on the commission to help us get there. And I think we actually own a very valuable asset. We are 10% owner of a very valuable water plant that value has increased, I think, exponentially since it was built, and that's a wonderful place for us to be in. So, thank you.
Well, thank you guys for stepping up and taking care of this. This was, this could have
appreciate-
gone sideways really quickly.
I appreciate all of Councilor Tracy's work on this, and we did get somewhere with what you were working on. But I still got a question, Chad, in that, in fact, on Addendum 1, Amendment 2, we did buy, to get into this partnership, we did pay $2.5 million, okay, for 10% and 2.5 million gallons per day, okay, allocation. Okay. Whether the plant could or could not do it at that time, as I see it, if I'm going up to buy something, I bought 2.5 million gallons a day. Okay. And now that we've recertified the plant and said that really 10% is going to be 2 million gallons, okay, that seems to be a big question to me, and I just want everybody understand that, or if they believe differently, that 2 million gallons is great. But I guess a slang way of saying it, we may be shortchanging the citizens 500,000 gallons a day.
Well, the reality is if it can't produce that much, then how are we entitled to something that can't be produced?
Well, there's different ways to handle that. One is to pay money back to us.
Well, and to kind of maybe put that into perspective, if I may, so the percentage, the 5 million gallons that's not available, basically, from 25 to 20, was split up based on percentage of ownership.
Right.
So the city of Gladstone lost our 500,000 gallons per day. Sunrise Water Authority lost 2.4 million gallons a day, and Oak Lodge Water Services lost 2.1 million gallons a day. So it's all based on percentage of ownership. So it was, during those conversations, that was what was agreed on as being most fair, as everybody takes the hit. Everybody went into this 2004 and 2005 agreement thinking that plant was going to be someday capable of putting out 25 MGD. That was an assumption back then. And so now that it's not available, how do you handle that? I mean, and those were the kind of discussions that were happening. And so everybody took a hit based on percentage of ownership.
Yeah.
And if I could just add to that, and just to be totally clear, because I think we had this conversation a little bit yesterday, is that there are absolutely legal arguments that can be made if the city wanted to go there, that we should have a right to the 2.5. What it would come down to is when we would go through either in court or through arbitration, what we would have to prove is what was the intent of the parties at the time we entered into this agreement back in 2005. So they'll look at the language of the contract itself, they'll look at other sort of supporting documentation from that time period to say, well, what did the parties intend? And, that's certainly something that, if it was the will of the city that we wanted to push that, we could go back to our partners and say, we feel that we have a legal right to this and we would like some sort of compensation, or we'd want that back, or, we could make those arguments. The flip side to that is that there's other aspects of the 2005 agreement that they could seek to continue and enforce, including the water rights issue that we talked about. So that's when I was talking about the give and take that went on, that's all part of that process. And as I understand, and again, I wasn't part of those discussions, but as Director Wynot just suggested, is that, it's, from my understanding, it came down to what was fair for all the parties so we could move forward in a partnership. But at the end of the day, this is a policy call for you all to make and what you're most comfortable doing. And if you want to go back and ask for more, I will certainly take that back to the other attorneys, and I'm sure Councilor Tracy and Director Wynot will take it back to their counterparts, and we can see what we can get. I'm not confident, based on the information I have, that they're going to voluntarily want to give us anything else without getting something else back in return. So it's just sort of, where do you want to negotiate and what do you want to potentially give up to get that? This was the deal that, everyone at the table seemed to agree made the most sense. But at the end of the day, you guys are the policymakers, and, we work at your direction and for you. So if you want us to do something else, by all means, we will do that.
So if the plant was upgraded, which I'm assuming is going to happen at some point, and we can suddenly pull out the 25 MGD, then we would get our 2.5.
Go ahead.
Well, if the plant is going to get upgraded, everybody has to pay to upgrade it.
Correct.
So then, yeah,
Right.
And it's going to be based on who wants to buy into that capacity.
Okay.
So if Gladstone wanted to, let's say they decide to do something there to increase it by 5 million gallons, add another section on the building or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Then the option would be who wants to buy into it.
Mm,
And so then
okay.
Gladstone would have that opportunity at that time.
And there is the option through Sunrise. Sunrise is looking at options as they look going forward, and they're trying to acquire the water. I mean, there's a possibility, and it would behoove Gladstone to jump into that, and all three of the partners actually buy into the upgrade and the capital improvement, because you're buying in at today or tomorrow's dollars as opposed to 10-year dollars.
Right.
So that was kind of discussed, and we discussed, not in depth, but we talked about it, Mayor, because it gave us the opportunity. We're sitting here as part owner of this plant, and there's a possibility of doing it, and if we did decide to do it, we would further increase our capacity. I do believe, though, that being able to go out onto the water market as a commission as opposed to us as a single buyer, there's value there as well. And to Chad's point, retaining our water rights, we talked a lot about external forces on the river. You know about external forces on the river. This is something we can't control. We certainly can't control it as the city of Gladstone without a water plant. So we would be at basically be at the mercy of anybody selling us wholesale water and whatever price that is. So I looked at this as more of a protection by having the coalition protecting our citizens in potentially excessive water costs. So, I mean, that's kind of where I landed on it.
And we also beefed up, this is another part that I didn't mention on, we did beef up the supply planning piece. Basically, all three members are going to have to come up with on an annual basis a 5-year projection of water usage. And based on that 5-year projection, the commission will go out on, if there's water if we're asking for projecting more water than the plant's capable of putting out, the commission's going to go out and negotiate with the other treatment plants on the river for the best possible price. And they can do that. They actually have more options than the city of Gladstone. The city of Gladstone has one option.
Right.
And securing a 33% stake vote in dissolution was important for us as well. It's a unanimous vote to dissolve. So that's something that protects us as well. We are not being voted off the island by the bigger dogs on the island.
Right.
Not that they're not. They're all great.
Right.
All right.
Another question.
Yes.
We've talked about this 2.5 million versus 2 million. It's not like we use 2.5 million gallons per day, 365 days a year. Is that correct? How often does the usage in Gladstone approach that figure for a particular day or season? And is there some kind of a valve that shuts us off when we reach that, or are we able to still get the water we need if our usage exceeds that?
Yeah. So as Chad mentioned, this agreement was kind of mirroring what we actually do today. So there's not an issue today because other users on the plant, the other members, are not using their capacity. And so the way it's written in the current contract and this one, the other members have first right to use that. So we're able to use the water that Oak Lodge Water Services is not using, for example. But someday they may use that, and that's when the negotiating with the other treatment plants is going to come into play. How often does that happen? The last time that it was looked at, I believe it was 8 times in 1 year. So if you look at it like that, in the future, we may have to go out and look for this extra water 8 to 16, maybe 20 times. I'm just crystal balling it there, but to kind of throw it into perspective, the last time it was looked at, it was 8 times.
Are you saying 8 times that Gladstone went over its allocation, or 8 times that the entire system exceeded?
No, just Gladstone went over
just Gladstone. Okay.
It's 2.5, yeah.
But it isn't until you go over capacity at the plant do you then start looking. It's not, when we go over our 2.5, we just pull from
someone that's not using it.
Of the other two entities. It isn't until that plant is over capacity that you would start looking for.
Right, and that's what the 5-year projection is going to look at. You're going to look at your history, and you're going to see a pattern, and you're going to have that hot summer, and you try to plan for that, and that's what's going to get the plant negotiating with the other water plants on the river for the best possible price. And quite honestly, there may be some times where we're buying the other water besides our plant because it's cheaper. That's possible. We don't know, but that gives the plant that opportunity to get the members the best cost for water, whether it's our plant or another plant, so.
I think we should put an emergency tap into the Lake Oswego Tiger Water Partnership pipe. But don't tell them.
But that's not treated. Ew.
We'll treat it.
Do we have public testimony on this?
Yes, we do have 2. So go ahead and call the first person up. Go ahead. Okay.
Ernie Platt.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, Councilors. Ernie Platt. I am Board Chairman of Sunrise Water Authority, and as such a Sunrise representative to the North Clackamas County Water Commission. I think the entire scene has been adequately summarized. Thank you, Mr. Attorney. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Tim. This is a year's worth of work that you're looking at here, and I think Councilor Tracy adequately summarized the demeanor and the characteristics of the negotiations. They were very forthright, agreeable, but it was not combative in any sense of the word. And all the issues got put on the table, and I think we come to resolution of all of them. I think the point I really wanted to make, and thank you, Jim, you made it just right here at the very last of this conversation, is 2.5 versus 2. It's not a problem. Gladstone has drawn over the 2 and has approached the 2.5 half a dozen times or more on a daily basis over the last year. But the water is there because the other parties are not approaching anywhere near what their capacity or their limits would be. So, and this agreement's written exactly that way. It's called available water, and to the extent it's available, everybody can, any of us, can go over our numerical limit that's in the agreement, if it's available. Now, the area is going to grow, and we're going to begin pushing in the aggregate the 20 million gallons a day number someday in the future. That's why we do a 5-year plan, and we continually update it so that we see it coming before we bang right against the wall and start telling people to cut back. The options are many to find additional water. First and foremost, I would say, is probably agreement to purchase water from one or more of other producers along the river. Clackamas River water, South Fork water, Lake Oswego Tiger. All are possibilities for interties that can add water, and we have agreed as part of the commission that found water is the property of the commission. So it's available to all of us, wherever it comes by or however we find it. Other possibilities are acquisition of wells, or correction and reclamation of lost water. Water that's been treated, goes through the system, and somehow never gets registered in anyone's meter. Leaks. I call it found water. All of those are possibilities of boosting the available water for all of us. So I think we've got an agreement here that addresses all of those issues and puts all three of us in a better position than we currently are. I will add both Oak Lodge Water and Sunrise Water boards have approved this agreement.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
Any questions? I'm happy to answer them.
No?
Thanks, sir.
And thank you all
Thank
very
you
much.
for sticking around.
Thank you.
Next.
One more, Mindy Garlington.
I have a question. Just want to understand this. Does this issue have anything to do with former Councilor Steve Johnson was talking about the fact that Happy Valley had not paid to be part of this, or is that a different deck of cards?
I believe that's the sewer district.
That's what I wanted to know. Thank you. Just pretend I never asked this.
No, you don't, on many levels.
I just was wondering if they had ever had to pay into that, like...
Does Sunrise not, who feeds Happy Valley?
Yeah.
Sunrise.
That's not.
Yeah. But it's separate.
But this is totally separate. Yeah, you're thinking sewer
Good
district.
question.
Sewer. All right, any further discussion? Would someone like to make a motion?
Yeah, Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we approve ordinance 14, look at that, I almost had it
Page
without even
9
looking
too.
at it.
There
To
you go.
approve ordinance 1492, amending and restating the intergovernmental agreement for the North Clackamas County Water Commission.
I'll second.
Motion was made by Councilor McMahon and seconded by Councilor Reisner. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed. So this one we have to do a second reading.
That's correct.
So could the attorney please do the second reading for us?
Should just read the title.
Yes. Whatever you think is required to make this very legal.
I gotta make it bigger so I can read it. Ordinance 1492, North Clackamas County Water Commission, NCCWC District Intergovernmental Agreement, IGA amendments. Did I read that? That's just both. Did you have it there? I'm sorry. I can read it.
Can I read it for you?
Yeah, no. Next time I'll wear glasses. Ordinance 1492, amended and restating intergovernmental agreement for the North Clackamas County Water Commission, Commission approved version 6/28/2018.
All right, Tammy, could you please call the roll?
Counselor Milch?
Yes.
Counselor Neese?
Yes.
Counselor Tracy?
Yes.
Counselor Reisner?
Yes.
Counselor McMahon?
Yes.
Counselor Mercero?
Yes.
Mayor Stemple?
Yes. Passed. Resolution, 1492, North Clackamas County Water Commission District Intergovernmental Agreement Amendments. All right, thank you very much, staff. Next item is Ordinance 1490, amending Gladstone Municipal Code, GMC Chapter 8.04, pertaining to nuisances. This will be the second reading.
Madam Mayor, Council, Ms. Betts, good evening, as we're approaching the later part of the night.
Sorry.
I came before you last council meeting and we placed a proposal for Ordinance 1490, and you passed that on one reading, and we were here tonight to do a second reading. After hearing some of the input and some of the concerns, one thing that we suggested or have proposed in this latest staff report is adopting ordinance number 1490 with a slight change. And that change is highlighted on, I believe in your packet, 10 TAC 5 under 8.04.145, vehicle storage on private property. And the reason that we thought that this was applicable is because it is more objective and it takes some of the opinion out of what may or obstruct the view in somebody else's eyes. So the language that we put in there, and it's highlighted in yellow and in red type, it basically states within the front setback as determined by the underlying zoning district. And what that basically means is that if it's in front of the front portion of the building, whether it's depending on zoning, a residence or commercial, then you cannot park vehicles. And that was the true and original intent of this particular part of the ordinance, is to ensure people didn't park their cars on the front lawn. And this clearly sets what that area is. And then we would strike C, which previously stated does not obstruct the view from any other property. So this is an effort to make it more clear. So you have two options on the table. You can vote as the original form as we proposed last month, or you can adopt this and revote.
Okay, so Chad, if we go with the amended version, then we have to start all over again with the first reading and the second reading, correct?
No.
Because it's changed?
This is the second reading.
This is the second reading.
But we want to amend it.
Right, so you can amend it between the first and second reading, as long as
Okay.
it was made available or read at the meeting.
This meeting.
Yes.
Okay.
So,
So we approved the first reading at the last council meeting.
With one nay.
Right. So tonight we are doing the second reading, however, we want to introduce an amendment to it.
Right, so I was just going to pull up your charter real fast to read you the language, but I believe the charter, do we have a copy of the charter on here?
Tammy, do we have any public testimony on this one?
We do not.
Okay. So while he's looking, how do you feel about the amendment? The changed language?
I like it. I think it's, and it's
Clear.
consistent with some things we're doing where we talk about setbacks in other sets of the parts of the chapter 10, I think, that we looked at, or no, the one coming up on membrane structures.
Okay, so if we did this one and voted unanimously yes, then we wouldn't have to worry about the second reading.
No, I think the
Later
idea
date.
is this is the second reading.
Right.
We
This
can
is
do it.
worst case scenario if we had to
Doesn't
start
have
all
to be
over
unanimous
again.
then.
Okay. Chad, you're supposed to know this.
I know, I apologize. I know David and I talked about this recently, which is why, but I would like to just confirm the language for you.
So while he's looking up, Chief Tong asked a question then in regards to the change. I've got a couple of, I've seen also a couple of neighbors that have a vehicle that's not parked in front of the house on the lawn, but there's between the driveway and the property line is grass, weeds, whatever, and they have a third vehicle parked there, or a second vehicle. That would still be not allowed, is that?
I think that's correct. From what I understand, and not being able to see it, but from what you're saying, that sounds like that would be prohibited because they're parking on a non-existent driveway.
But they could put gravel down.
And they'd be
Right.
fine.
And keep the weeds off, and they would be fine.
Right.
Or if it's possible to pull it farther back so that it's behind the front of the house, too.
Chad, do you have a answer yet?
If they can get it back there.
I'm sorry, just give me one more minute.
Okay.
Internet connection slow?
Yeah.
And then also, though, that it would still need to be licensed and registered, though.
Yeah.
Which...
Operable would be more of the key word.
Okay.
Operable. It couldn't be a disassembled vehicle.
Chad
That
has
goes
an
to a
answer.
whole-
So what the charter says is that an ordinance enacted after bill alone may have no legal effect if it differs substantially from its terms as it was thus filed prior to such reading, unless each section incorporating such a difference is read fully and distinctly in open council meeting as finally amended prior to being approved by the council. So basically, you would need a motion to amend the ordinance.
Okay.
And approve that motion to amend the ordinance. And then we need to read the language in the record.
Just the changes.
The changes, yes.
Okay.
And then once those changes are read into the record, you have the ability to adopt it under the second reading.
As the second reading. Okay. Would somebody like to make a motion to accept the amended sections of this ordinance?
I'll make a motion that we accept the amendment for 1490.
I second.
Okay, motion was made by Counselor Neese and seconded by Counselor Mercero to accept the amendments. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Oh, sorry. You're saying no?
No.
Okay, so now that he said no, do we have to then do the first and second, or where?
We've amended it.
Okay, we've amended
so that
it,
was
but
just
since
a-
it's the first and second reading, I don't know if we need a unanimous on the amendment.
On the second, you don't need a unanimous.
Okay, so we're good.
Yeah, and that was just a motion to amend. That was not a
Right.
motion to actually adopt the ordinance. Now you would need a second motion to adopt the second reading of the ordinance.
Okay, so would someone like to make a motion to adopt the second reading of the
I
ordinance?
will make a motion that we adopt the second reading 1490.
A second.
All right, and the changes are, this is the new language, to 8.04.145, vehicle storage on private property. 1, it is unlawful for any owner or person in charge to allow any vehicle to be parked. The change is within the front setback as determined by the underlying zoning district, on any tract of land owned by any person occupied or unoccupied, except on duly constituted and licensed trailer courts or sales lots. A, the exception such vehicle may be parked or stored on the property provided it, A, does not constitute a hazard to traffic on the public streets or sidewalk. B, does not restrict vision of motorists on the public street. C, has been stricken, which did say does not obstruct the view from any other property. D has now been changed to C to read has a current valid license or registration. And D, which is previously E, states is parked on a concrete, asphalt, or gravel driveway or pad which is free of any weeds or vegetation. Motion was made by Councilor Neese and seconded by Councilor Tracy. Do we have any further discussion?
I just want to explain as to why I still oppose this. I believe this is better than what it was, and getting in a direction. But one, there's hundreds of driveways in this city that have vegetation that people park their vehicle in. My neighbor and I share one, so technically we could get be in violation of this. Second, I think that vehicles that are off the street that are not obstructing views from another property. I for years had my father-in-law's '56 Chevy pickup in the driveway. It was Bob's.
Okay.
So that I think just because it's there and it's not licensed, should be able to have it there. It's not obstructing anything. So that's mainly why I'm
Thank you.
Opposing this.
Any other discussion? Tammy, could you please do a roll call vote?
Counselor Milch?
Yes.
Counselor Neese?
Yes.
Counselor Tracy?
Yes.
Counselor Reisner?
No.
Counselor McMahon?
Yes.
Counselor Mercero?
Yes.
Mayor Stemple?
Yes. It's passed. Ordinance 1490, amending Gladstone Municipal Code, Chapter 8.04, pertaining to nuisances. All right, next item is Gladstone Emergency Preparedness Update. Colin is not here.
No, and actually, we just wanted to put this report into the council packet so that you would see the internal work that's being done on emergency management. I think former Chief O'Connor alluded today at his command ceremony that it's very rare that you have a senior center manager that takes emergency management so seriously, but there is a lot of work going on in our departments, and this really is just for informational purposes only.
Great, and I challenge everybody to get involved with CERT because the big one's going to happen, and we all need to be prepared. And we can't depend on our police, I'm sorry, Chief Jolly, and fire department. We need to depend on ourselves. So I highly encourage everyone to be involved.
Following up with that, we need, I think, as a body, though, to come together and train as to what our responsibilities are. I mean, the county's emergency management puts on a yearly training. It's the same one year to year for like new members. Yeah, I have too. I've been a couple times. But it's just, not even, basic. And I know, FEMA has online stuff. But I think we need to sit down and do a tabletop exercise, or at least go through what our responsibility, because we've never done that. At least, the 5-6 years I've been here.
All right, well, we do need to do that. We'll bring it up with Colin since he's our emergency preparedness
This is great information,
guru.
too.
All right. Is that it for this item?
Thank
All right, number 12 is amend the business license fees. I know we discussed it quite in length before. Do we have any
We've
discussion?
been publicly talking about this since February, and at the June council meeting, we did have a consensus from all of you that you felt comfortable with the city moving ahead with the amendments. However, we afforded Councilor Neese some time to meet with staff and go through it further. She had no additional issues. So for us, this is a technicality of coming back and say, for you to give us direction that in January we can go ahead and amend these fees to reflect what is in your staff report. We actually send out renewal letters in the beginning of November, if not sooner than that, but we wouldn't actually change the master fee schedule until January.
Okay, do we have any questions? Any discussion? Someone like to make a motion?
We do have
do
someone,
we have
someone that, yes.
All right. I'm sorry. I was wondering why you'd been sitting there patiently.
most everyone else had talked already. I'm Nolan Kidwell. I'm with Cascadia Cutlery. I'm a local business owner. I think you just answered one of my questions, is if it's not going to be ratified until January, then there will be no refunds for this year's fees. The only other question I had, I was here for the work session, and I missed the June session, so if it was covered there, I apologize, is there was a mention of where the fees had all been going up to now. They go into a fund, I believe, and that those funds have never actually been used or earmarked for actual use. And I would like to propose the question of, are they going to be earmarked for business development as they were? Will they actually get used sometime?
Excellent question.
Yes.
Thank you. Because our next council meeting, we're talking about the expenditures for the business development community promotions line item. It is a work session, and you're welcome to attend for that. And it's going to talk about perhaps a community grant program and some strategy work that we want to do and follow up to the downtown revitalization plan. So that is going to be our work session on August 28th.
And
Perfect timing.
Take it I'm correct that we will not be refunding this year's fees,
We have
even
not
though we've already
discussed it.
established that they were on top of what should be there.
What staff's proposing is that this would go into effect in January 2019.
Okay.
Well, it was something that I had brought up back when we talked about it earlier this year, in that when we established the $50 fee for home ownership, that it was supposed to be only just an application fee, and not a yearly fee, and it was established, what, 4 or 5 years ago?
Along with the $5 fee for
Right, yeah.
business owners.
So, I think, and that's what I was going to just, before making a motion, maybe get some feedback from you. I know Councilor Tracy had mentioned, I think, in conversation since then about not feeling that we shouldn't. So I was wondering, because I think we should, at least if a business has been in business two or more years, that they should have at least 1 year refunded, which would be $50. How much that is, I don't know.
I don't think I was pushing back on that, Councilor Reisner. I think I was pushing back on retroactive going 4 to 5 years or wherever this was established. At this point, I got to be honest with you, I'm not exactly sure, but I don't think I was necessarily pushing back.
You can, and I might have
I could look at
misunderstood.
it. I mean, I can go back and look.
Could that be a separate topic where we could vote on the new business license structure starting January, and then if we choose to refund money, that would be a different discussion?
And just read your cost impact that staff has discussed and the administrative time incurred, and to go back retroactively and try to calculate and figure that out, and we have new software. That's all we're saying, is that it may cost more for staff to do that, but that's a policy decision that you have to make.
Yeah, I would like to look at this as a separate issue.
And I'm
if we
proposing that. I'm not proposing making
Right.
a decision on that tonight.
Can I ask a quick question of clarification?
I'd actually like to make a suggestion of simplicity on that, is you put out a new letter at the beginning of next year, is if you guys decide you're going to do a refund, let them know that they are eligible if they come and request it.
Okay.
That's just a suggestion. It simplifies it entirely. They have that year to request the
Or not.
refund of the prior years, and if they don't, then they don't.
But what you were bringing to our attention, though, was as a business owner, you were not only filing the business fee or the business license fee, but also the owner's fee or the
Right.
FTE
Yes.
Yeah,
fee,
home
and that was an
occupation.
home occupation.
Yeah, as the only entity in my business,
Right.
you should either roll that into the actual business fee or not charge me at all for being the only employee in
So
my
you could
business.
just basically, it would be in the fee, and you
Yeah.
could have one, potentially have one FTE.
You can't have
yeah.
a business without an owner.
Right, okay, thank you.
Okay, so I
No, I thought
I think that's a great idea, as far
Yeah.
as, especially just put something in a letter for next year. when
You
that
guys are
letter's
putting out a
come
letter already.
Right.
Yeah, so why don't we just
Yeah.
we change some of the fees. If you request it, we will look for the previous year and refund.
all right, but again, that's something that we can probably discuss at another meeting, because that's a different.
Well, we
Well,
can
look,
take that
we could do it right
direction
now.
Do you want that to, okay.
I mean, Tammy, are you clear on what they're asking for?
I believe so, that in the letter, when we send out renewals, that we will put in there something about, anyone that has a home occupation, if they had paid their fee last year, they're eligible for a refund, but it has to be put in writing that they're requesting the refund.
Correct.
Is that what I'm
That's my
understanding? The $50 fee?
And I believe that would only be in the case of someone who had paid it multiple years. If last year was the first year that they paid the $50, then they would have already, that would have been their application fee properly applied.
If it was a new business,
Okay, yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
But
So
again,
anybody
that will
2 or more,
Yes.
correct?
2 or more
That's my
years.
thought, yeah.
We can
Okay.
we can take that direction now, if you
All
want.
right, if somebody wants to clarify what the amendment to this is.
I'm not sure this is even an item that involves.
Yeah, we're voting on it.
This is-
Right.
We're just directing staff
Right.
to administer the new fee schedule. as-
Right, we're voting on that, but I want this change added into this.
And I think we have what we need from you to
Okay.
say, yes, go forward and make that. And then we will come back and amend the fee schedule by resolution.
All right.
Okay.
So we're not approving this tonight?
Nope.
You are telling us this is
Right,
the
right.
direction
No,
that
no,
you want
I'm
to
not,
go.
that wasn't a question. That
Okay.
was
All right.
just a statement. Thank
Okay,
you.
so, Michael, or Counselor Milch, is this the direction you want them, staff to go?
Yes,
You're
yes,
comfortable with that?
yes.
Counselor Neese?
Yes.
Counselor Tracy?
I would agree.
Counselor Reisner?
Same here.
Counselor McMahon?
Yeah, with the stipulation it was the 1 year.
Right.
Okay, 1 year.
So if they didn't pay, so if this year was their first year with a home occupation, it was the $100 because that's the fee to do the
Process,
mailing
yes.
for the,
For
everybody.
$50, I think.
It's a
Yeah.
$50
Well, it's
fee.
$100 total,
No.
right?
No.
Oh, no, it's only,
$100 a base fee, plus $50 for a home occupation, plus $5
Right.
per employee is the current fee.
I believe the original complaint was that we are paying as a home business
You're paying
more
over
than
and over.
an
Yeah,
inline
the
store.
50 every year, which it was really only initially to set up.
Yes.
Okay. Counselor Mercero?
Yes.
Okay, I'm fine with it too, so that's the direction we want to go. All right, next is business...
Real
I'm
quick,
sorry.
while I still have a moment up here, one thing that wasn't addressed in your tobacco thing was whether or not the fees and fines that they inflict on people that are not following it, whether or not those go to the same fund as the people paying their licensing fee, or does the state just pocket those in another
I
account?
would reach out to them. We didn't get a whole lot of information, so...
You guys are the ones looking at adopting this.
Well, we
I'm
are,
just throwing
but
it out.
we-
It
but
was
we'll-
something that wasn't addressed. so.
Right. No, we'll get more information as it moves forward.
Thanks, Ellen.
Yeah.
Okay, business carried forward. We have I-205 tolling letter to ODOT.
Yeah, as I brought up last month, the state legislature instructed the Oregon Transportation Commission to look into I'm just going to use the word tolling of I-5-205. And as I think we witnessed here a month or so ago when we were doing the groundbreaking, I-5 was or 205 was closed down, and it was interesting. And so I foresee and wanting to get ahead of the game, and maybe we're trying to climb up Multnomah Falls, swim up Multnomah Falls and don't have a chance. But at least I'm asking. I feel we should be on the record as being against this, because it is going to really impact our city if this goes through. And so that's why I laid this out. And so if you have any questions,
Has everybody read
or-
these?
Yeah, I think
Or
it's a very good letter.
I'm totally in support of these, and I'm on the C-Force Transportation Group, and Yeah.
Except for the proof checking, nobody else. I think my wife read through it. So if you have any suggestions as to the
fine the way
wording,
it is.
I was trying to allude to, it's open too.
I commend you, Councilor Reisner, because one of the things that struck me as we were looking, as I've looked at the congestion pricing, I think Gladstone could essentially be potentially the most impacted community out of all the communities that could be impacted, just because of where we are and because of the thoroughfares. And you bring up a great point. When we were standing there in the groundbreaking, we went up from maybe 10 vehicle trips per 15 to 20 minutes to about 100 vehicle trips as we stood there. So that says it all right there with 205 closing down.
Yep, and they haven't done any studies looking at where those cars are going to go.
No, and I agree with Councilor Reisner. I think I commend you for this.
My guess, and they're going to head to the Arch Bridge.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right.
Yep. And now Oregon City's talking about tolling that one. So, there you go.
So we'll have a Gladstone ferry down there at Meldrum Park.
The Woober.
We'll make a bunch of revenue off of that.
Wouldn't be the first ferry. That's true. Yeah.
All right. So would someone like to make a motion to let me sign these letters?
I'll make a motion that you sign the 2 letters pertaining to the transportation.
The tolling?
Mm-hmm.
I'll second.
Motion was made by Councilor Neese, seconded by Councilor Tracy. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? I'm signing the letters.
Thank you. Did I really need to go through that formal part? Could we have just given direction?
Yeah.
It's always better just to have the motion, so that way it's clear that it's the full
I thought so,
council's
but
desire.
I just got thinking with what we've been discussing.
All right. Next is business from the council. Actually, business from the audience discussion. Anything that any direction you want to give staff? No. All right, business from the council. Councilor Mercero.
I just want to thank the council for listening to my questions regarding the WCCWC issue. That's the most reading I've done because I read it both ways several times, and the way it was done, basically written, was so much different from the way it was originally. You had to really sort through it to figure out what the hell it meant. So anyway, the question seemed to be regarding contract law, basically that we paid for something. The citizens paid for something. And I just wanted to make sure that I got the question out there so everybody has understood it the same way. So, thank you very much.
All right, Councilor McMahon.
Nothing right now.
Councilor Reisner.
The library board met last week, and it was the first time that we had our new director, Mitzi Olson, with us. And I truly believe, and so does the board, that this is a great step where we're able to start, working with the county as a partner in this. So going forward, we're going to be getting, I think that yesterday was the deadline, a recommendation from the library board for appointing a person to the Concord Property and Library Planning Task Force. I'm not sure how big that task force is, but the county has asked that someone from Gladstone be on it for a voice, and we're the one that's going to be making that or that appointment. And then also we need to start getting the word out in that if I'm missing any of this, please, Jackie, correct me, that our library steering committee is going to be appointed by the county, but our recommendation, is that?
Yes,
Okay,
it's going, at your September 11th council meeting, the county is going to come and talk to you about the Gladstone Library Advisory Committee makeup and how they'll be selected. Yeah.
So there's a lot of people that have approached me over the last couple months. They're not really interested in being on a standing committee. We're meeting every month or whatever for 4 or 5 years or whatever, but they want to be involved. And so I've suggested keep your ear, and watch the newsletter, because these committees, though, they might seem long. They're going to be 2 or 3 years in the making, and also the community, or I'm sorry, the police station, City Hall, what are we calling it now?
Civic
Center, sorry, thank you. There's going to be a committee for that too, and giving people a chance to be involved. Also, speaking of the community festival, the Library Foundation had a very successful book sale again this year, and they were telling me that they couldn't have pulled it off without Greg Alexander's help. And so wanted to send out a shout out for him. Also, Mitzi mentioned that she's obtained a drop box for, or 2 drop boxes for library books that she's wanting to put somewhere in the city that people can drive up. I've seen, and so you might, if that's, I don't want to say, so keep in mind as to where you might want those. We're going to talk about it again probably next month. So if you have any thoughts, let me know, or pass it on to Jackie.
This would be a place to return books that are due without driving to the library itself.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Correct. Okay. And then the festival was great. Sunday, there was a lot of people at the park, more than I think I've ever seen before. What else? I had a thank you here for something else, but
all right.
Thank you, and have a great.
Try to be brief.
Sorry.
That's okay. I'll try to be brief. I would have to thank Greg Alexander too. I think he was out there lending a hand to a lot of folks at the festival. I heard from other folks that he was volunteering and doing a lot of things, and appreciate Citizen Alexander. Real quick, I had the opportunity to see our staff in action. I'm always fascinated by how good our staff is. The water rescue and all of the folks involved. There was a certain captain kind of running the scene there, and it was very professional. I'm just incredibly impressed with everybody. And then Jim Wynot's crew and the fire crew who were dealing with the water main break up there, and I think it was in Sherwood Forest. Yeah. Great crews. I just am really impressed with everybody that is on staff here at the city. So, and I did enjoy the festival. It was a great year. So, thank you.
Councilor Neese?
I've had the opportunity to attend the CLT and for laminated timber.
Cross-laminated timber.
Yes, and it was a really good, informative meeting, and I brought some material back and shared with Jackie, and it would be great if maybe we could use it and work with our library, with our new library, and do this. It was very well put on, and learned a lot of things. Learned a lot about connectors that I did not know about before, so that was real interesting. And then I also attended a meeting for the Homeless Solutions Coalition. I had been invited, and so I will have more information to bring back next month.
Good, thank you.
And so it was a very good meeting, and Gladstone's got a real opportunity to participate. But I'd like to bring additional information on this to all of you. And I would like to make a comment. Mr. Osborne seems to continue his harassment and bullying, and I think it's time to quit. He doesn't have all of his facts accurate, and the 6 pages that he was referring to, and he can say what he wants, but I think it's time to let go and move on. I think it's getting tiring, and I believe people are tired of hearing it. He's not an attorney, and he is not on the Ethics Commission, so he has no right to speak because he was not there and he was not part of it. That's all I have to say.
All right, Councilor Milch?
I normally attend the school board meetings each month. I missed last Wednesday night's meeting because on Tuesday, one daughter and son-in-law had a second baby, and the 2-year-old big brother was staying at our house, and if you've ever shared a bed with a 2-year-old who sleeps sideways instead of up and down, you know that you're in no condition to go to an evening meeting. So I apologize for missing that. I did want to say we received some written testimony from former Councilor Steve Johnson regarding the North Clackamas County Water Commission. He asked that it be added to the minutes. I don't know what our policy generally has been, but I thought if it could be an additional item on the agenda place on the website for that meeting, it would reflect that we did see and take into consideration his input on this. You know, one of the things about this agreement, these cross-jurisdictional agreements that go on need to be done in an atmosphere of reciprocity and mutual trust. That's something that was missing in the past, I think, from some of these related agreements that, frankly, Mr. Johnson was a part of. And I'm glad that we have turned that corner. I'm very pleased with the way we were represented on this issue by Councilor Tracy and by Public Works Director Wynot. And I think we got a better deal than we might have thought we would have on this. And so I'm pleased. I'm glad that I had an opportunity with a couple other councilors and Mr. Wynot and the city administrator to actually talk face-to-face with Mr. Johnson about his concerns on this. He is still a citizen of this city and has a right to his views, and he did have some background with it, but I thought that on a couple of key points he was mistaken, and frankly I believe we made the right decision tonight, and I stand by that decision. So I want his comments to be part of the record, but I certainly am happy with the agreement that was worked out.
Thank you, Matt. All right, I just have a couple of things. First, in my professional life, part of what I do is tribal consultation. So I had the honor of meeting with the entire Cultural Resource Department at the Grand Ronde Tribe, and we brought up the fact that Gladstone is a very, very important part of their culture, and they would like to come to Gladstone and start participating more and maybe looking at ways that we can partner on some cultural resource surveys or I don't know, events, something. The bridge, we talked to them about our library and some other really cool things. So I'm really excited about opening that door, and they're a great group of people, and they are so thrilled that somebody from Gladstone is finally talking to them. Apparently they've tried numerous times in the past, and no one's returned their phone calls. The next thing is I am part of Metro's Nature and Parks Stakeholders Group. Today we spent the day touring parks in Multnomah County, and we're going to be doing Clackamas County and Washington County. And I'm doing this so that I can create some partnerships for our Parks Department and FOGDAP. So I've got a whole bunch of really amazing ideas and contacts for the Parks Group, so you guys will be seeing it after I introduce it to them. I was asked by the pickleball group whether lighting the tennis courts at all would be feasible, and I would be more than happy to talk to PGE and see if that's something that they would consider sponsoring. They would like to do a couple evening pickleball, I don't know, not tournaments, I don't know what they call times. Two things, Community Festival and National Night Out. We did not have very good representation at both of those events. I know the Community Festival, we wanted people to sign up to staff the city booth, and I appreciate the people that did, but so few did that others felt they needed to be there the entire time to cover those shifts. And if we don't get interest, then I think we need to consider not even doing the city booth next year. You know, unless all of us feel that it's important enough to spend time there, then I don't think that it's fair that it should fall on the shoulders of just a few. And National Night Out is something that's really important in our community, and I was the only person that went from City Council. So that's another thing we don't need to discuss it tonight, but if we're not going to get support for these events, then I think we need to consider not participating.
Mayor, I got an email saying that there were like 7 or 9 different National Night Out events
Parties,
going,
yes.
parties going on. When
Yeah.
you say you were the only one, you went to the one in your neighborhood, or?
No, they want us, the city council, to ride along with the fire and the police department and visit the different events.
Oh, I see.
I don't think it was communicated real well to all of us, because
Okay.
I got the list, but it was late, and I think that's it. That
Part of
is
it. Okay.
Is part of the problem. And, I mean, I would have been at the community festival, but unfortunately, I had a conflict and I had to be out of town. But I've been there for the last 2 years, and you're right, we've always had good participation in the city booth.
I don't want to make an excuse for myself, but I will say this. Both of those events are important to me. I did spend some time at the community festival and actually was at the city booth. Unfortunately, and I wasn't tracking the calendar. Unfortunately, National Night Out, I ended up taking a 3-day vacation and going over to Eastern Oregon. But it was painful for me because last year, you saw me, you got off the fire truck. I was at one party and I got to make my way around. And it was a great event, and I would never say that that's not an event worth going to and representing. So I do agree with you, Mayor. I just had to get out of town.
I feel that way every day. So, you know, I'm not reprimanding anybody.
No.
I just want to know that if we're going to commit to this, then we are committed to these events.
Correct.
So next year, we'll just, you know, do more pre-planning, and maybe manning the city booth all day, every day is not the right solution. Maybe we need to cut those hours back or do something
Officer
different.
Olson and I sat there. We had a long discussion on I think it was Saturday night, and it was great because I got some time with him, and that was a great experience. But yeah, it was it's kind of you know, the crowd kind of thinned by late Saturday night. So
yeah. So anyway,
Thank you.
That's all that I had. Would someone like to make a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I move. Then we adjourn.
I'll second.
Motion was made by Councilor Reisner, seconded by Councilor Neese. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting adjourned at 9:02 p.m.